Greetings, fellow humans. I am Hugh.
And I am Man.
And together we are definitely not
Two
kobolds in a trench coat. We enjoy human activities, such as paying taxes,
having existential crises,
and RPG horror stories. Let's see what we've got today. Today, we have a party meltdown over an NPC, a DM's weird obsession with forcing the gay character to make an heir, and a monk who had to assassinate a party member.
Player throws slurs at another player over an NPC by Reddit user SSGT Snuggles. First time posting, I'm sorry if I screwed up anywhere. This happened about a year ago, so I apologize if I misremember a few details. At the time, I was running a new group for 4 players. The players so far had one adventure together, killing rats in the basement. Already the party was role-playing together and making inside jokes. Even the new players who were a bit shy started to open up. For their next adventure, the party has been recruited to go to a nearby farm that has been harassed by nearby goblins. The farm is tended to by 3 NPCs. Hillard, an old crotchety man who is secretly a powerful wizard hiding after a job gone wrong. Mallory, his wife, who never got developed. And Dolores, their restless daughter. Hillard wants Dolores to stay on the farm, but Dolores has a hunger for adventure. The party decided to take Dolores along with them to go oust all the goblins and give her some spare equipment that they have lying around. For context, her stats are all atrocious, with about 6 HP to her name. Miraculously, she survives her encounters, but not without almost dying several times and realizing that the adventuring is a lot more dangerous than she thought. The party, to my surprise, convinces Hillard to let Dolores join them. More inside jokes appear with some players in character doting on their new adventuring buddy. Here's where things got weird. One of the players, our rogue, takes Dolores on as a protégé. He spends most of his gold in town buying her equipment and healing potions to attempt to give her life lessons and training on their downtime. While I don't give a mechanical benefit, I do roleplay Dolores, slowly building confidence, namely, feeling more safe now that she has a shield and armor to hide in. Another new player, who was playing a druid, decided that she was going to roleplay that she wasn't a fan of Dolores. The druid insisted on making remarks that it's a waste of time as Dolores is probably going to wind up dead. Other players in character chastised the druid for this, but it's all in character, so I think nothing of it. Post-session, there are more jokes and things that seem to go well.
Okay, so far it doesn't seem horrible. You know, when you're picking up an NPC, especially one who's likely going to be a liability rather than a help, it's understandable that the party's going to have mixed reactions to that.
It's really good roleplay for them, and I really like that the DM was invested in that, and that he just sort of let it happen without, trying to skim over anything. And like they said, there's no mechanical advantage to going through all that roleplay with Dolores, but it's great, and it was fun, and so they let them do that, and I think that's really good DMing on their part.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't have to benefit. In fact, it probably shouldn't make them stronger right away, but that's why NPCs exist, for good role-playing and creating these moments.
Later, I get a bunch of Discord messages from the druid player that the rogue player is DMing her and making her feel upset and useless. I go and talk to the rogue player, and he's complaining because he doesn't like how the druid's player is putting down Dolores. I tell him that firstly, if he has a problem with the other players, to bring it up with me first, a policy I have so that I can filter out the vitriol if players have legitimate concerns. But I remind him that Dolores is an NPC with about 6 HP, and while he might be getting attached, the druid player is under no obligation to do so. I ask him if that's a problem for him, and let him know that I will address it if it is. But he says that it isn't and apologizes for his behavior. I speak with the other players and ask if they're having any issues with this, and they're surprised that I'm even asking. To them, and me, it added a much-needed dynamic to Dolores. I then ask both the druid and rogue players privately if they would be okay with meeting together in a group call to have a discussion, namely to see if this can be salvaged, and they agree. Surprisingly, the rogue player apologizes for being out of line and admitting that he let it get to him. I propose that the players are allowed to have different opinions and can roleplay different opinions, but that any conflict stay between the characters and not extend outside the table. The players agreed to make up, and the next session goes pretty smoothly. 3 sessions later, and he has a full-on explosion, calling the druid player a female dog and an impolite word for the female genitalia. He rants that she's ruined the game by being such a downer to Dolores, and leaves the call. He messages me privately that he's really enjoying our game and that he would love to be invited to another one if I host, but that he can't stand to be miserable with that "see you next Tuesday" is making everyone feel depressed. Again, I spoke with the other players, and they were surprised that he felt that way at all. Part of me wanted to call him out, but I'm too nice and instead thanked him for the compliment, told him that he would not be receiving a future invite to my tables, and blocked him. I then had a long conversation with the druid player who has been absolutely emotionally destroyed by this and in tears. I have a player meeting with the remaining players about it. I offer to end the game if no one feels like playing anymore, but everyone says that they enjoyed the game thus far and wanted to see more that I had in store. Even the druid. Somehow the game is still going on, and Dolores is somehow still with them, alive and well.
Okay, I'll be honest, I thought the druid was going to be the problem here, but it turns out it was the rogue.
I mean, I kind of thought it would be the rogue, given the fact that he was like spending all his money on this NPC. It kind of felt like a little bit of like creepy vibes, and that's just me being suspicious of everything.
Entirely justified to be suspicious of that. I just genuinely thought that the druid was going to kick off over not wanting to be dragging this liability NPC with them. That's where I thought this was going, but apparently the rogue was overly care-bearing the NPC and got way too protective of someone who was probably rightly questionable of dragging a vulnerable NPC along with them.
OP said that she had, 6 HP to her name? That's a liability for sure. So I see where the druid would be coming from. I feel like the rogue sort of got a little too emotionally invested in this Dolores character. It's a good example of like role-playing getting a little too real, basically, where you start to take it personally when other players are not going along with your plan.
Essentially, yes, the rogue really got attached to Dolores. Druid was probably right to be concerned about that, even from a role-playing standpoint of, no, this person is in danger and therefore shouldn't be here because they are a person and taking too much of a risk, and rogue's care-bearing is only going to get Dolores killed. Yeah, perfectly valid.
This is a really good example, too, of like how to handle conflict that's happening outside of the table. Make sure that everybody's communicating with everybody. They get them together so that they can talk about things. And then even when Rogue goes off and is like, well, I might want to be a part of one of your other games. It really wouldn't have been worth it to say anything to him and call him out because what good would that have done? You were going to block him anyway.
Yeah, the DM did first-rate DMing. They reached out to people, they tried to have a conversation to resolve things. They did everything right. Rogue was just determined to have a problem and didn't realise they were the problem. Finally happened to me, by Reddit user Nagito Komeda. Okay, so I've been DMing for a while. This most recent Saturday was my first foray into being a player in ages. And let me tell you, it went badly. Obligatory sorry about formatting, I'm on my phone. I got invited to this server with one of my friends, who's a player in one of my campaigns. Very cool guy. We get in, we're planning out a connected backstory for our characters, mingling, reading lore. The lore is where it first started getting weird. The DM had this lore thing with half-elves where they age super slow, and don't usually look their age until they're 30 or 40. My character, we'll call him Warlock, was a half-elf, 19 years old, and I was basically told that he looks 13. That's just how the world works. Which is less than ideal. But, at the time, that was the only weird thing. I honestly just thought it would give me more of an excuse to play up the spoiled brat aspect of my character.
So basically what he's saying is that the half-elf is you.
I have no idea what you are talking about. I have always looked great for my age.
Oh yes, you look great for your age. Just maybe not entirely your age.
Outrageous.
Yeah, I already got alarm bells in the back of my head because when you play a character who's over a certain age of consent and the DM's like, yeah, but they look like they're a minor, oh.
That does kind of ring alarm bells. With half-elves and elves, because of their extended lifespan, you might expect it in certain circumstances. Because they live that much longer, they therefore reach maturity later. There's some logic to it, but I really don't feel the DM has the best intentions with it. So then we got into this prologue thing. Session 0 was basically like an hour-long conversation beforehand where the DM just spoke about world building. Maybe it's on me for not asking, but there was really never any talk of what content everyone might be uncomfortable with. After that hour, we just got right into playing. Stuff was going decently at first. Basically, Warlock was the youngest son of a smaller noble family, and we started off with this large gathering of nobility where they were basically going around and having a job fair for magic use. Meant to be how the party meets each other. Again, not going so bad. There was one NPC that mistook Warlock for a girl, like it was funny in the moment, so I didn't really think much of it. It got weird when the whole party as a group got together and then went to try and speak to this other noble family to form some kind of business partnership in order to have extra funding and access to magic items for their upcoming quest. They were all Dragonborn. There was like negotiations and stuff ongoing. Then it basically just sprung up that, yeah, for your end of the bargain, you need to sire a child with someone under our family banner because, I don't know, heirs and power and some stuff. So my character is a gay man. 100% no interest in women at all. I'm trying to laugh it off like, no thanks, but I do have sisters. We could work out betrothal or something with one of them. But this Dragonborn is simply not taking no for an answer. Less than ideal, once again. I'm still thinking like, there's got to be a plot point here somewhere or else this is just really weird.
I would probably be in the same boat as OP in that situation where you're like, there's a plot point here, right? Because otherwise I'm starting to feel kind of creeped out. Like I said earlier, when you have a character that the DM says, oh, it actually looks like it's, a minor. And then all of a sudden he's got this weird impregnation thing going on. So much creepazoid going on.
Yeah, that's a very weird thing to put into the deal. Okay, I get it. They're a noble family. OP's from a noble family. They would obviously have interest in building alliances and marrying off their daughters, basically, because let's face it, in the medieval world, daughters were basically property to be sold off for cattle and alliances. However, for the DM to then keep pushing it after they're not interested it's just creepy, and it really feels like a massive boundary violation.
Yeah, you should never ever force a relationship or a baby on anybody, IRL or in-game.
Yeah, very few people are up for that kind of game. If he's saying no, he's saying no. A thing to note is that Warlock is very unhealthily attached to his fiend patron. Like, genuinely, he believes this demon is the only person that cares about him. I have him step aside to talk with his patron, thinking the DM might, follow the outline I've given for the demon's personality. No, the demon just says, you have to do it or I'm going to leave. I will admit, I probably should have realised by this point that this wasn't going anywhere I was comfy with. However, I was still just hoping that this would lead to an actual plot and maybe not be terrible. Warlock panics, of course, because he has abandonment issues. No choice but to agree. So we fast forward to this banquet thing that's entirely centered around this little gay boy who needs to knock up a girl tonight. I'm making it very clear in character, at least, that Warlock is not comfortable with any of this. Like, he's getting really drunk. He's refusing to talk to anyone. He's hiding under the tables. He's just not having a good time. But the DM barely wants to pay attention to any of the other players, so the misery continues. Genuinely gets to the point I'm just having him blind pick one of these maidens. DM was so weird about calling all of them maidens, it was really creepy. And thinking we can just have one terrible fade to black moment and that'd be it. No. This random woman NPC that Warlock had to sleep with then says something the next morning that they'll have to keep doing it as much as possible until she's certain she's been properly seeded. Direct quote. Then tries to guilt trip with the whole, do you hate me? When my character is less than infused by the idea. Still, barely any attention has been given to the other characters. We called it there, but just yikes. So suffice to say, I have fully learned my lesson. No D&D is much better than bad D&D. If any YouTubers want to read this, please, that would be very cool.
Your wish is my command.
Aye aye, Captain.
Oh my god, I think I might have almost puked when they said get properly seated.
Yeah, that got particularly gross.
Obviously, we've seen some pretty weird stuff on the internet. When you experience that in real life and you hear like a real person saying that, like that has got to be just the most surreal, disgusting experience ever.
Yeah, this DM kind of probably said a bit too much about himself.
Here's the thing as well. DMs who force their players to do it with other players or NPCs and they don't want to, when you railroad them into that, that is SA. it might be virtual, but you are SAing that person's player character. It's not okay, and it's especially not okay when you're completely ignoring what the player is saying about their character, when the player is giving you every hint that they do not want to be there, and especially, in this case, the player was gay, so it wasn't even like it was going to work that well to begin with. It kind of also feels very homophobic as well, like he's trying to fix this character.
It absolutely does. It feels like there's more than one angle going here from the DM, and it's incredibly uncomfortable.
Q. My character gets assassinated because of something I had zero control of, by Reddit user Mass. Let's get something straight. Party, sorcerer me, monk, fighter, and wizard. DM had us teleported to Wildmount for some mission that the Acquisition Inc. listed us to do. 10 minutes in, and my sorcerer falls into a pool of mercury because I nat 1'd my perception, despite everyone else noticing it. DM asked if anyone else would call it out and my character could avoid it, and they all said no. So I fall in mercury. Wisdom save? Nat 1 again. Ended up being controlled to attack my party, so we rolled initiative. One sorcerer gets stun locked by the monk and knocked out before taking a turn and falls unconscious. DM. Okay, so you're no longer controlled. We'll keep initiative going to see if you get stabilized. My turn. Death save, nat 1. 2 failed saves. Monk's turn. I kill him. Unarmed strike. Now, I would have been okay if he had argued that his character wouldn't have known that my sorcerer was off mind control or whatever, but he explained that since the start of the campaign, he rolled a dice and decided at random that my character is assigned to him as a job to be assassinated. Mind you, that wasn't even discussed with the DM, nor me. My character's backstory was so empty of enemies or things that knew about his existence to begin with, so I was surprised that for no reason, he was marked for death. So I had to sit out the rest of the session dead, and eventually I left and never returned.
Well, that monk's just a massive jerk. They clearly just wanted a reason to do something out of line. Unilaterally deciding that another player is a character to be assassinated by yours, that they've been assigned to it without discussing it with the DM or bringing it up at all in any shape or form, is just a jerk move. I can't justify it.
No, there's no justification for it. Honestly, I think he's basically playing an edgy rogue that's actually a monk. That's kind of what it sounds like.
Yeah, it's just edgy monk instead of edgy rogue.
I mean, if I was the DM in that situation, I would have booted that monk immediately, or had a very, very serious discussion about making unilateral decisions that affect the entire campaign without talking to the DM first, or the other player.
Yeah, with what the monk said after the fact, how they justified it, if I was the DM, I would have likely had conversations with the monk about what they just did and possibly considered retconning it, maybe. It doesn't feel right that they can include something like that in their backstory that wasn't available to the DM and not really okayed, because it's fatal PvP. Although the DM did instigate it with what happened before, but that's not unusual to have some mind control make a party member turn.
The monk that decided that he was just going to randomly murder hobo. I mean, it's creative murder hoboing, to be fair. So there's that, I guess. Hey, Hugh.
Yes, man.
A human, a half-orc, and an elf walk into a bar. The dwarf walks under it.
And with that, we have definitely not been two kobolds in a trench coat. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and make the necessary sacrifices to Tiamat. We'll see you next time.